think the time has come to start this final plenary session of today. And my responsibility is to introduce a fellow countryman as the chairman. That's Misha Glenny. Misha Glenny is a writer, an author, has been for 20 years, a very distinguished broadcaster, built up a tremendous reputation as an authority on the Balkans, has published a number of books which have become landmark books on the subject, is currently working on a book on cybercrime and cybersecurity. He also writes in the New Yorker and the New York Times. Misha, it's wonderful having you here, having you with us. We look forward to your opening statement and then to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lord Griffiths. Well, I don't have a great deal to say because our panel are much more interesting on the subject at hand than I could ever be. And so I just thought I would explain to you what we're going to do. We're going to have short introductory statements from our four guests this evening. And then I will pose one or two questions which I hope will tickle and stimulate the debate amongst them. And then once we're warmed up in that spirit, I shall then be turning to you, the audience, to come up with some fascinating and daring questions. The one thing I would say about this session, and perhaps all sessions, is they are taking place in some extremely testing political and economic times. Definitely here in Europe, if not in other parts of the world. And I remain extremely curious as to what our guests feel about how entrepreneurship can succeed and assist in this type of atmosphere when so many people are very nervous about the way things might be going. So I'm going to, without further ado, introduce our panel one by one. After I introduce them, they will speak for 2 to 3 minutes, setting out their stall, as it were, on the subject of the hour, which is whether a family business or listed company, the pride and prejudice of entrepreneurship. And I would like to start with Sanjiv Goenka, who is the Vice Chair of RPG Enterprises, which is involved in the power industry, energy sector, mining, retail, and entertainment. A very diverse company with an extremely powerful and long-standing reputation in India. If I'm correct, Sanjiv, you're currently the president of the All India Management Association, which is a rotating position. And he's also, which I was rather fascinated by, the Honorary Consul of Canada in Kolkata. So, Sanjiv, your thoughts, 2 to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Misha, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to begin with a disagreement. And my disagreement is with the topic of the evening itself. It presumes, it actually insinuates that a family-owned business cannot or should not be listed. And to my mind, I do not believe these are mutually exclusive. I own and operate companies in India which are listed. Many of my colleagues on the table have the same situation. So fundamentally, there might be a stage where to begin with, a concept, an idea, is not tested and therefore it's not listed. But once a product or a company becomes successful, it gets listed. And So to my mind, it's not a distinction between being family-owned wholly or partly. The chairman has asked me to also speak on the problems or the situations facing second and third generation entrepreneurs. And this is something that I must confess I'm acutely aware of. You begin with a huge expectation around you. People expect you to start where the previous generation left off. They've had a 30-year run or a 40-year run, and you really have had no experience or no run as yet. The legacy of the past, the legacy of the name, actually weighs you down. And it's difficult sometimes to introduce changes, introduce new products, and sometimes even change people. In India particularly, people don't change jobs that often. And to induct fresh talent, to induct fresh thought is a challenge. Overall, all I can say is that the ideal combination is a family-owned, family-run business which is listed publicly, so that there is control, there is accountability, and there is a sense of responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanjiv. And I now turn to the one member of our panel, Dr. Jürgen Hambrecht, who is not involved in a family-owned company in one form or another. He is rather the chairman of the board of executive directors of BASF, or BASF, and has been since 2003. But although now a very significant figure in German industry, because BASF employs close to 100,000 people worldwide, you started with a doctorate in chemistry, I believe, and so certainly know the subject of which you're now involved in a business sense. So, Dr. Hambrecht, do you see a difference between the two sectors, between the family business and the listed business?
Yeah, let me start by saying I participated in the World Economic Forum in a similar setup. And there was entrepreneurship, the key to sustainable growth. And before I was allowed to talk, a lot of CEOs of startup companies praised their new products which have not been in the market yet. And then I felt, let me say, the sentiment in the room, poor guy from a big dinosaur. No innovation, no entrepreneurship, bureaucracy, and what you have, leapfrog changes not possible, no destructive sentiment in the company. Now let me tell you what BASF is. 145 years of successful management, and right from the start, by the way, publicly listed, not family run. From the start, in 1865. Now, I have to say that our company still exists is not the proof of the existence of God. It's a proof that there is entrepreneurship. We have reinvented our company several times. Over the last 10 years, we have shifted our portfolio to two-thirds in 10 years. You have not heard a lot about it? We just did it, and this is entrepreneurship. I think the second point I want to make is entrepreneurship is only one success factor of doing business. Only one. It is an important one, yes, but there are others. I would say innovation, sustainability, social responsibility. There are many, many more. And a third point I want to make, entrepreneurship is everywhere. Even in government, in the church, it's in industry, it's everywhere. And the differentiation between family-run and, so to speak, employed managers not being entrepreneurs is a prejudice, which I have to say is constantly increasing, yes, and endangers, at least for the young people sitting in the room, the basic concept of maybe becoming also an employed entrepreneur. And I think this is something we ought to change. And let me finish by saying, what is entrepreneurship for me, personally? I think it's adding value to the society at large. Not being exploitative. Adding value to the society at large. And you certainly have to do this by taking responsibility for and shaping the future of your company. And this with a clear vision and with a lot of passion.
Excellent, thank you. Very forceful defense there. I now turn to another of our hybrid guests, Andreas Jacobs, who is the chairman of the board, well, of Jacobs Holding, first of all, which is a holding company that has a controlling interest in two listed companies, if I have it correct, Barry Callebaut and Adecco. Andreas studied at the University of Freiburg in Breisgau, and at INSEAD as well at Fontainebleau, from where he has an MBA. Andreas, the hybrid perspective.
Yeah, as we heard before, I'm representing the combination of both. I think the healthiest combination, which is a family business owning listed companies. And I think the entrepreneurial part in our family helped a lot to make these companies very entrepreneurial. In Barry Callebaut, which is the largest producer of cocoa and chocolate in the world, we have about 20% of the chocolate that the world is eating is produced by us. We're trying to be very entrepreneurial, quick, innovative. We try to live very fast to the customer's needs. And with Adecco, we're trying to be entrepreneurial because we have many thousands of shops, and every shop manager has to be entrepreneurial, to be quick every morning, to be close to the customers. We're placing a couple of 100,000 workers every day, so serving over 100,000 clients. So they have to be quick. And what helped us a lot is, I think, and these companies helped a lot, the philosophy of the family, actually my father's philosophy, that we like to be an entrepreneurial family, not just as a family, but as a company. So we means the company trying to be entrepreneurs on each and every level. Doesn't mean that everyone has to run it his own way, like a little sausage box in the corner somewhere, but we want everyone to be ultimately responsible for what he or she is doing at each and every level. And the philosophy, the feeling of a family being ultimately responsible, we try to push this down to each and every layer in the organization. And that, of course, helps a lot. Being a family pushing this in helps a lot more than just anonymous shareholders to push this through the organization. So that is our philosophy. We live this way. That's why we are in the organization and not outside. That's why the company is more important for us than the shareholders. And that's a very important part of it. We believe that the company is more important than the shareholders, because the company is more than just shareholders and making money. So we're trying to be very responsive and very, entrepreneurial in everything what we're doing in these companies. Of course, you ask yourself, so what's the difference between a company that's closely managed and coached by a family versus a company which is not closely coached and managed by a family? And of course, the first thing that comes into mind, and that's what we read in the press, is that families usually have a longer term planning cycle. They can go through rationalizations maybe more rigid because they don't have to think about the stock price of tomorrow. They think about the stock price in 10 years. So all these things are probably right. I think still think the mixture of both is the best. On the one hand, being listed, and as we heard before, being disciplined. Being disciplined by being listed, meaning corporate governance, independent boards, no family members being in the management because they have the same name, but only, if they have the qualification, which is a huge important thing. You have to be disciplined. So the beauty of both is the discipline and also the feedback from the valuation of the investors, public investors, versus the, let's call it passion, long-term view, the entrepreneurship that a family can provide to a company. That's the best of both worlds, and I'm happy to live in the best of both worlds. Thank you.
Now, I'm sure I don't have to explain to this audience, or indeed any audience around the world, what industry our next guest, Robert Peugeot, originally came from. His family, leastways. He is now the chairman and chief executive officer of Société Foncière Financière et de Participation, FPP, which is a holding company, and as I understand it, it's there to preserve the interests of the Peugeot family, as I understand it, but do contradict me.
Why preserve? Expand.
Expand, preserve and expand. What's your take?
Well, I'm in a difficult situation because as being the French member of the panel, I should probably be French and try to find an arrogant, contradictory line. I've lost it. I've lost it because I fully agree with what had been said. I find the subject, there's something wrong with the idea of opposing family-owned companies and listed companies. I'm CEO of a listed company who controls PSA, who's also listed. And it's all family controlled. I can have proof of this, not only the number of shares, but the fact that when you have to change the CEO of PSA, I have to do it, which happened last year. So it's difficult for me to find the contrary line, but I thought I have two experiences in my life. This is the way I'm a little bit of an entrepreneur. I spent 30 years in the automotive industry as an engineer, and I spent 10 years as a member of the executive committee of that group, in charge of design, innovation, information systems, quality. But design, innovation. I must have to tell you that you cannot oppose innovation with entrepreneurship. We need, in big companies, to survive, to grow, we need plenty of innovation, we need plenty of new ideas that can go through up to the final customer. When I was taking care of that, I started an incentive scheme on patents, for instance. We were going around 200 patents a year, and I set incentives and targets. Now PSA is the #1 in France with nearly 1,000 patents per year. So it's possible to generate innovation. And if I think about you, most of the companies in the world are family-owned companies or entrepreneur-started companies. But most jobs are in big companies. And so for the students who are here today, the panel this morning was saying, what will I do with my life? It's likely that the majority of you will probably go into big companies. But don't go there thinking, oh, I'm going into civil service, I will have a boring life, and I have no chance to do entrepreneurship. Don't think that. In big companies, we like to find entrepreneurship and people with new ideas. Now, my second part of my career, I changed, so this is where I'm a little bit of an entrepreneur, to take on the management of the holding company. And there I'm an investor. I'm costing 0.6% in management fees per year on invested funds because I'm a family member. And it's a different life. It's a very interesting life, and it shows also that one can change. And you can change. Don't think of your careers as being one-sided. You can have many different opportunities. But I moved like the dinosaur story, and I have one. When I started this new assignment, I had a meeting with a group of bankers headed by a very good friend of mine. And so I welcomed him. It was some time between Lehman Brothers and General Motors, if you see what I mean. And I told him, this is a beautiful meeting. Thank God there are no journalists, because we are a group of automotive people. As you know, we're all described in the world as dinosaurs. And Lord Griffiths being here, I will be polite. And you, my friends, are from the banking community, so you're generally in the public opinion described as gamblers. I didn't use that word, but you see what I mean. This friend had a very good answer. He said, yes, this is right. Our two industries are in this situation in the general public opinion, but there is a difference between dinosaurs and gamblers. Dinosaurs don't reproduce as well. So, sorry to be not contradicting what has been said, but after all, we are able to have sometimes the same opinion. It makes the job difficult for you.
Absolutely. No. I duly noted that our panel all seem to agree that the premise of our discussion is a false premise, but there were some very important points that came out from their comments. I would like to come to Jürgen Hambrecht straight away, because although you agreed that there wasn't a contradiction here, you did say that there is a prejudice in perception between the two, and that prejudice is growing. So what I'd like to start off with is what are the causes of that prejudice? What are the consequences of the prejudice, and how can one combat it? So, Dr. Hambrecht, if you'd like to start, but everyone chip in as they feel compelled.
Yeah, I would say the first to start with, it's a cultural issue, and it's very much focused on Europe. It's not an issue which is in a large scale in the US or in Asia. It's Europe. Let me tell you, just as one example, if you ask your people in your company, in your direct neighborhood, or the management of, now I'm referring to a listed company, employed managers who are greedy, who are just taking their own interests as priority, you will get the answer, these people are excellent, they're doing an excellent job. But if you ask them about the managers 100 kilometers away or so, you get a totally different answer. And the real issue is, and this is just from the past, let me say 3, 4, 5 years, yes, we had managers who have been greedy, made big mistakes, and they are taken as an example. And there are maybe, I would say, 98% of the managers are doing a super job, are taking care of the company, future-oriented, are real entrepreneurs, but this 2% in the public is taken as, let me say, the standard. And I have to say, this is something we need to change. And this is reflects a little bit on the power triangle, the public opinion, elite of management, elite of politicians, and the elite of the press, where we really have this issue. The top line has to be negative, and that's wonderful, and this is how the world is. Positive news as a top line, very rarely to find. You may find it in Asia. You also may find it in the US, but difficult to find in Europe. Now, I think this is one of the major reasons. Now, what are the consequences out of it? And I stop after this. I just said it. Employed managers, anticipated as not being entrepreneurs, is something which has impacts on students, and especially, by the way, female students. We did a detailed study on this. on female students because they get uncertain whether they should really follow this path. And then they go into different directions. And I really have to say, here we need to stand up, we need to speak up. Let me take it directly to me. If this is, prejudice is always there, you have to be very careful in the public and show your pride of what you have achieved. You have to be careful with that. Now, if I'm not talking up, being pride, showing my pride, certainly this will not be perceived in the public as a positive company or management and what you have. And this has a lot of consequences. So I show my pride. I stand up firmly. I go to the politicians, talk about this differently, and tell them 99% of the companies in Germany, where this is one very serious issue, are handling things absolutely top class, and stability of the economy is just coming from because of that. Because of that. And I think this is a way we need to go forward somehow.
Now, Andreas, I wanted to ask you, you highlighted the ability of family businesses to take a more measured view of long-term decisions, the horizon. There's the issue of continuity, the fast decision-making process. When you highlight that in terms of family businesses, are you also saying that there is an inherent problem for publicly owned companies to act in a similar way? Is this their Achilles heel?
Well, to be a bit provocative, yes, I think there is a little bit of a problem, and so fuel a bit fire here. What I think, and you mentioned correctly, what I think the problem was and is the greed factor. The greed factor coming from bonus systems. Bonus systems became bigger in the last 20 years in terms of their value to those who get a bonus. And the problem of the bonus systems, to my knowledge, is that they are most of the time entirely dedicated, especially listed companies, to the profits of the company or the share price. So they're very much financial driven. And financial driven means quarter, half year, 1 year. And I think that's a very dangerous thing. Why is it a dangerous thing? Because it doesn't really put any benefit into working for a 10-year project, working for something that makes the company better in 10 years. So how and why can the industry not come up with remuneration projects where sustainable growth, values in 10 years can be bonused? How can we get there? I think we have to think about it. We have to change that. And that's something that has still not been changed. We came out of this recession, or we come slowly out of this recession, hopefully, and we still don't talk about it, and we still don't implement it. So there is something that family businesses can secure in a much better way, because, as I said before, they are interested in the company. They're interested in the company to be there for their children. They're not interested in the dividend of the next quarter. They are interested, yes, but they're more interested in the company for the next 10 years and the company of their children. So they think about, how can I put a bonus program in place which is supporting long-term thinking, long-term investments. And funny enough, there has been a study from Deutsche Bank in Germany showing that the R&D spendings from family-controlled companies is much bigger than from not family-controlled companies. Isn't that maybe a signal that there is more long-term thinking in family business?
Sanjiv, you look skeptical there, but can you address that? Tell us whether you agree or not, but also the cultural issue, which I think is interesting, that Jürgen Hambrecht raised, which is the question of, this is a European problem. We're hooked on it, unfortunately. What is the cultural atmosphere that enables mega family corporations to emerge, as has been the case in India?
In India, generally, you have a board at two levels. You have the company board, and you have the family board. So the family board has representatives of the entire family, and one or two of them represent the family and the decisions of the family at the main board. But I entirely agree with the statement just made that a family-owned and a family-run company has the ability to take a longer-term view. By that, I'm not running down companies that are not run by families. I sincerely and very honestly believe that entrepreneurship, the spirit of entrepreneurship, is not something that you get by inheritance or by birth. You either have it or you don't. And you need not be an owner to be an entrepreneur. Where you have a second or a third generation company, which is owned and run by a family, to my mind, success would lie in the fact that you get a really extraordinary guy who's a very capable guy, who has entrepreneurial spirit, to run the company and to run it well and aid him, support him completely, check him also if required. And I think reinvention in any company, owned and managed by family, owned by family, not managed by family, not owned by family, not managed by family, it doesn't matter what. The principles of success remain the same. It is a question of the vision of the people who are driving that and driving the business forward.
A lot of what you said brings me on to what I refer to as the Buddenbrooks syndrome. I allude, of course, to Thomas Mann's great saga of a 19th century German family in Lübeck, and how, as the business progressed through generations, it collapsed essentially through decadence of the younger generations. So, Robert Pajot, is this a problem that each successive generation is supposed, A, on the one hand, to be as good and entrepreneurial as the parents' generation, and B, what happens if the younger generation, as Sanjiv has alluded to, actually understands the way that the market is changing, but that means making big decisions in the structure of the company? Aren't there a lot of tensions within families that make change difficult?
My answer is yes. No, it's true. We've been for 200 years in the business, 120 years in cars and 200 years in business. And so it's each generation there is a problem. We really think in terms of long-term survival, long-term expansion. Sometimes it's wealth creation, sometimes it's just survival, depending on the period. But at each generation, there are different opportunities and different risks. So clearly, in a family company, my main objective is to pass the buck to my children. And so I'm trying to create value to ensure that this is possible. It gives a different perspective to the culture of the company. And for those of you who hesitate to enter a family-owned company or a company listed without controlling shareholders, it does make a difference in the culture, in the values of the company. But it's possible to make a success in both instances. So clearly, to survive long term, yes, you have each generation to have to adjust to. If I take the example of Hermès, I'm an independent board member of Hermès. Jean-Louis Dumas, who died last week, Jean-Louis Dumas transformed the company. He was a family member. He took on as CEO, and he managed, through innovation and creativity, to expand the company more than tenfold in 20 years. Change so it's possible to be entrepreneur, to keep the family values, which are very strong at Hermès, and to have a global luxury giant present in Japan, in China, in America, everywhere in the world, with probably the best products you can dream of. So there are challenges all the time, but a company that manages to keep an identity, and the family helps to give the identity, has a different set of values sometimes.
But do you think...
I will give you an example in the car industry, not in Europe. But isn't it surprising that between the three American car companies, the one that didn't disappear, didn't go to Chapter 11 is Ford? Facing the same situation?
So, Jürgen, in that case, tell us, because you were saying at the beginning that BASF has managed to reinvent, restructure, reposition itself in a very fundamental way 3 or 4 times. So how do you go about that? How do you avoid the trap of General Motors, for example, if we continue the example there?
Let me say, success story of BASF is innovation. We have been one of the innovators in the chemical industry. Nobel Prizes, new technologies, constantly. And this is the success factor. But I do also a little bit opposed to Andreas' approach. I think R&D spending, this is one of the figures which is very often very misleading because people count very differently, first. And secondly, you need to really compare apples and apples. And then you will find out that this is not the truth. I totally oppose to this. R&D is essential, and maybe it's deriving from the fact that I am in an industry which is always very, very long-term oriented. If we talk about a project, to realize this takes 5 years. So it's already a span of 10 years to show the success. So this is right from the beginning long-term. And R&D spending, for example, throughout the crisis, and you asked what's all about the crisis, I think entrepreneurship also is proven in crisis time. That you take care for the short term, at the same time shape the future for tomorrow. We have not decreased our R&D expenditures in this crisis at all. We increased. We increased. And there are many, many more companies who have done that. Second argument with regard to bonus systems. This is the topic of the annual shareholder meetings this year. Half of the time, and you know we have in Germany long-lasting annual shareholder meetings, 6 to 10 hours. And out of the 6 to 10 hours, half of the time is salary system of the board. And we have a 2-tier board system, by the way. It's totally different to the rest of the world. So a CEO in Germany is not CEO and chairman. The chairman is a different 2-tier board system, totally independent from each other. Now, but coming back to this, I have to say there are many companies who have already long-term incentive plans. And there are others who have short-term. And they exist in family-run companies as well as in publicly traded companies. The difference is that publicly traded companies are much more transparent than family-owned companies in general. If you go into the details in specific cases, you will find all examples on both sides. So really looking to the very, very long term, shaping the future of a company needs a very clear vision and needs also basic values. And these basic values are, so to speak, the framework in which you can run, and you should not go over these fences. And this is exactly what is the success story of BASF. we have, this is not very well known, a basic principle right from the beginning, which is called Verbund. This is horizontal and vertical integration. We are absolutely a hybrid company, very broadly diversified. But what we really take care of is that though all the business are interrelated, from people management, from customer management, and from the added value which is achieved. And if you take this as an example, you cannot translate it in all other industries, of course, but this is a success story, and we do it since 145 years. And the entire company has this culture, this basic thinking, huge solidarity between the respective businesses. Yes, there is a possibility that one business is supporting another business at time, but has to pay back in another time. This is very similar as in family-owned companies, though this, at the end of the day, make story very short. It's an issue of management and of people.
So, Jürgen, you have answered or started to answer the question that I posed at the very beginning of the issue of recession, economic crisis, and how entrepreneurship and what type of entrepreneurship, what it can do to engage with this and to start moving us out. And I'd like to ask the other three before I go over to the audience. Robert Peugeot, can I start with you about this key question of what the role of entrepreneurship is and whether there is any particular advantage to family or publicly listed companies in dealing with what is in Europe certainly now a critical situation?
Well, yes, we've had a really incredible crisis. It's obviously not totally finished, and the new developments are quite worrying, I must say. But I would say that since 2007, what I would like to point out is that most companies I know, be they family-owned or private or listed, most managements reacted extremely well to an unbelievable crisis. I think the progress, maybe from management schools, the progress of management in dealing with cash, inventories, suppliers, reducing production, cutting costs, surviving in a difficult banking environment, I think most companies in Europe played wonderfully well. I was very impressed. I thought it would have been worse. So I would like to say that this is true for all companies, I think, all companies I know. And certainly all companies I invested in.
And is this a reflection, do you think, of improved management culture that
yes, definitely.
Is able to respond in this?
Definitely. I think the mobility, the information systems, the knowledge that the risks are very high helps management in all companies to take quick decision and talk to workers in a factory about cash program. The workers say, "What is the story?" "Well, we'll tell you," and they do it. So it was absolutely remarkable that we had so few bankruptcies in Europe in this period. Yes. We had bankruptcies, of course, but could have been far worse.
Andreas Jacobs, one of your businesses is a commodity business and very sensitive to consumer responses to the recession. How have you been managing, and where do you see the entrepreneurial spirit as protecting you?
Well, the good news about chocolate is that when times really get bad, people eat more chocolate. At least something nice during the day, So, in fact, we did very well, still growing fantastically well. So I shouldn't use the chocolate company as an example, but in the HR company in Adecco, we had to react very quickly because that is a very cyclical business. So the moment there is a recession, we have to almost overreact and really try to cut costs to survive, which we did. We went down revenue-wise minus 30%, in some countries even worse. And you know, if you want to compensate for that in a company that has nothing but labor, it is a bloodbath. It was very tough, and I admire the management for being very strict and for taking the right actions very quickly. That was a very good reaction. I have to admit that the problem, let's face it, is not a problem we all know. It's not a problem we could calculate in our business plans. It's not something you also as students have learned about, and then you open chapter 13 of your book and then you apply the recipe and off we go, and next year everything is better. That was not the case. We had no visibility. We did not know how things work together, from banking to recession, from recession to inflation, from all these things. And I must say, all these companies really reacted fantastically well. And if you look at how many companies survived during this period, it is absolutely fantastic, honestly. I'm very positive about this. So all these companies were responsive. They were trying to survive. They survived. Yes, there was a lot of unemployment, and there still is a lot of unemployment. A lot of business models are questioned. But in general, the only thing that really worked in this recession was the companies reacting very well. Because if you look at the politics, the politicians really acted like politicians. I mean, the first thing they said, well, let's blame the bankers because they take the big bonuses and go bust and take us for a ride and cheat and lie. And the second thing they do now is these big bailout systems where, you know, in all fairness, this is all, we all got to pay for it. Not we, but our grandchildren got to all pay for it one day. So the honesty in working and communicating on the business side was much bigger than on the political side. And I think, again, businesses reacted perfectly well. Chocolate was fantastic and very good. Thank you. Thanks to all of you. And with the HR company, I think we are now sensing a great return. We are reacting very quickly after a recession. So we sense a good return, and I'm very positive about the economy going on. I'm just terribly worried about the politics messing things up.
Sanjiv Goenka, I'd like your take on the recession and entrepreneurship, but also I'd like you to tease out something that you refer to as part of the Buddenbrook syndrome of when you get a younger generation which is full of ideas, but the ideas may clash with the previous generation. And given the speed of technological change now, I would have thought that issue was accentuated these days compared with the past.
Well, speaking of recession, for two of my principal businesses, they behave differently. In a country like India, which is short on power, the power business actually grew during that recession period by 8%, which was quite remarkable. But as far as our retail business is concerned, it actually took a dip of about 18% in terms of sales. People just deferred purchases. And for that, we had to indulge in very strong cost savings, and we reduced costs by about 28%. And that was significant. And that was possible because the family drove that. It had to happen. The entire management team was opposed to this severe a cost cut. But it took 9-10 months, but it happened. Talking about the pace of change, yes, it is a big challenge, and even bigger today than ever before. My 20-year-old son, who's in his sophomore year at Wharton, keeps sending me emails every week thinking that we're not growing fast enough. I thought we were doing very well. I thought my plans are to expand 4 times in 4 years. And I thought that was aggressive, and he thinks it's very passive. So that's the divide, and that's how fast things are changing.
Thanks very much. Okay, well, now I'm going to open it out. And first of all, I would like to call on Dr. Tomonov from the Sumitomo Metal industry. Who's going to make a comment and ask a question? Dr. Tomono. Do we have a roving microphone here? I'm sure we do. There it is, and there is Dr. Tomono.
Right in front.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm appointed as a representative of how can I say, the typical of the economy, steel making. Human being knew how to make steel already some 4,000 years ago. And maybe second point is a unique history and the governance of Sumitomo group of companies in Far East, which is Japan, yes. So let me make one comment to give you some more key aspects to start discussion. And let me ask one question finally. So about Sumitomo. Family Sumitomo started business as a venture to produce copper some 410 years ago. Okay? After that, they explored a huge copper mine, biggest in the world at the time, and the business grew, expanded, and a branch off. And now, more than 300, this is a point, public listed companies are operated under the family name Sumitomo in Japan, covering metal, of course, chemical, cement, and shipbuilding, electronics, banking, insurance, trade, whatsoever. And total market cap of core 20 companies of Sumitomo is equivalent to the total of Toyota and Sony. This is about the size of the company. And during the past 400 years, we have learned a lot of lessons. We survived through crisis, recession, dramatic change in policy, whatever. And among many lessons we have learned, the most important one and the basic one is for a sustainable growth, entrepreneurship, or entrepreneur way of thinking. This is a key, okay? So some keywords we acquired through these sessions today, they are maybe vision, or you pointed out innovation, or passion, failure, or maybe appetite for risk, or whatever. All these are in our lessons during 400 years. This is one point. And we implemented these lessons carefully to the management structure, and we execute our business in accordance with lessons we have acquired. This is one point. So in a big organization, we have everything, okay? So second point is ownership. Family Sumitomo does not own any share of these 300 companies under the name of family Sumitomo. So he is very much respected, of course, and he is acting like an evangelist to, how can I say, tell us, the management, the business spirit, okay? And actually he is reporting to me. So let me ask, taking this background, let me ask the very basic question, maybe coming back to the basic question, that is, do you think still it is true that the entrepreneurship can only be found in family or privately owned companies? Probably would you make a comment in short words? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone wish to respond? In a sense, we have a question here from the audience from Joan Xiao Jing from China. And the question is, as Deng Xiaoping said, whether it is a white or a black cat, as long as it catches the mouse, it is a good cat. And I guess that's what the message of the panel has been. I mean, there has been a little bit of difference so far about about what can do it. But the question that
Can I make a comment on that one?
Yes, of course.
Our responsibility is to choose the cat.
Right. So you have to know a good breed when you see one, or indeed a good mongrel. But there is an issue. There is an issue here of size as well, because we started off at the beginning by saying that after a while, a family company is likely to become publicly listed. But what is it that forces you into public listing? Why can a family not really manage a vast company anymore, or tends not to? I mean, what are the structural reasons for that?
Well, the size of the business. When you have a large business in a dinosaur sector, you need a lot of investments. You need equity. You need a lot of money on different forms, and the best way to get that is to be on the market. So it's very logical to be on the market. But contrary to the Sumitomo family, we hope to remain with some shares of the company.
Well, I think in addition, if I may say so, to the access to capital, which some private family companies have to have or like to have at some stage because they like to grow faster. And for some families, and I include up my family as well, is being listed helps you in many areas. First of all, it is a good tool to attract good management, because you can put in good management plans which are linked to share price and developments, long-term developments, and so on. And second, it helps us, it helps many families a lot to really introduce corporate governance in a proper way, to introduce independent board members, to really systemize themselves and to discipline themselves. So it's a tool to discipline themselves, which I wouldn't underestimate.
Here's a question from Rashmi Raja from the National University of Singapore, which I find very interesting indeed and extremely germane to this. How do you define trust in an organization? And would you rather place trust in a family member who has an interest in protecting your assets, or would you prefer to place trust in a system to choose, say, the most capable successor? This issue of trust affects all of our lives in many different ways, but it seems to me that it is absolutely central in the business world. Families better at trust than institutions and systems? Sanjiv.
Well, really, it's difficult to say which is better, but I think, to my mind, the ideal combination would be a family which has good systems, which operates transparently, which practices corporate governance to the hilt. That becomes absolutely ideal.
How do you view trust? I mean, Jürgen, for example, can you have the same degree of trust in your management structures as, say, in a family business?
Oh, without any doubt. It's very clear. I would say trust has very different aspects and very different layers. To start with, I have to say you have to earn the trust. It's long-term. It's very basic. It disappears overnight.
Right.
And you have to work a long way down the road to get it back. So you better have your basic values and principles right, that everyone can follow up very clearly, have it very transparent, so that everyone knows exactly what's going to happen. And with this, you have a basic, very fundamental trust in a company. And I think this should not be different from family-owned to publicly traded companies.
Yep. The only question is, I suppose, is it easier to create trust within a family business, or are you faced with the same problems?
My personal perception is it is basically the same problem, and it depends on the size of the company. If it's a very small company, startup company, you usually work in a team. And you have then a very clear-cut split of responsibilities, who has to contribute what, which added value has to be brought in. If it's getting much bigger, then you have to have a structure. And within the structure, you then have to have basic values and principles according to which you are acting. And if this is very transparent and it's followed up very, very carefully, solidly, trust will be there. And very fundamental trust.
Okay, opening it to the floor. I see a hand there straight away. Madam, do please introduce yourself before you pose your question.
Hi, so I'm Caroline Mullier from France. And I was wondering, having all those success stories on stage out of family business, how do you pass on the interest and the core values to the next generation? And my second question would be, what impact does business have on the relationship within the family? Thank you.
Any of you, except Jürgen.
Well, I don't need to have dinner with my cousins because I see them the whole day. But coming to the next generation, and I was thinking the whole day with this audience, with all these young students who are thinking, what am I going to do in my life? I was thinking, I remember when the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union fell, there was a famous writing by Francis Fukuyama, very Hegelian, saying this is the end of history. I mean, the main conflict between capitalism and socialism and communism is finished. Now we are around the world, we are going to share the same values. So this is the end of history. There is not anymore the major contradiction. How wrong was that? I mean, we all know that the world is tragic, the history is tragic, the future can be tragic. And really this glimpse of an end of the history didn't last long, of course. But I find today that things are far more tragic than one would imagine. Not everything is tragic, but the situation in the banking crisis and European crisis now is very, very serious. And on the other half, a large part of the world is coming out of economic subdevelopment, and China, India, Brazil are really showing the way to growth. And simply, these continents are recovering their share of the global world GNP, probably the share they had in the 15th century. So the world is changing a lot. That makes the family discussions always very interesting. But the message for the young generations, it's that one has to be cautious because the history can be tragic. At least in a Protestant company, like a family like me.
And next to you, sir.
Hello, I'm Rohit and I come from India. My question is probably applicable to family managed businesses which are like in the initial years, maybe 30, 40 years. I mean, the fact that a person knows that most of the decisions will be taken by the family, does it serve as an impediment to attract professional talent for a family managed business? I mean, how do you tackle that? I mean, is this a big question for a family managed business to attract professional talent into the business? Because the people who are professionally trained, probably they have a feeling that they don't have the same kind of entrepreneurial and professional freedom when working for a family managed business.
Sanjiv, do you want to?
Yes, I can tell you from our experience, it's actually much easier to get very good talent because people have confidence. People there are lots of professionals who work for us who've done very well and who've been recognized by society as having done well. But yes, if you're starting up and the first 5 years, first 10 years, I think there is an issue. You will have to sell your idea to the person you're employing. You'll have to sell the concept. You'll have to get him convinced of the viability of your passion. And if he can become a part of that passion, then he would come on board, not otherwise.
There, over there. Sorry, I am trying to see as many people as possible. It's difficult.
Beate Degen from Germany. And I think I need your help. You lost me in one part of the discussion, especially when it went around innovation and entrepreneurship. I think this question goes to you, Mr. Hambrecht, and Mr. Jacobs made the comment about R&D. And Mr. Jacobs, I understood you that you meant by R&D really creating new businesses. That was my interpretation of it. And as far as I know, big companies, big publicly-owned companies, R&D is more and more externalized, going to these small entrepreneurs, bringing in new ideas and creating new businesses. And I would like to hear from you how you are distinguishing innovation at BASF from entrepreneurship. Question number one. And question number two is more a remark. I have never seen an entrepreneur leaving its company. But in publicly owned companies, you do have that point that managers simply leave the company and go somewhere else. Entrepreneurs don't do this. And I would like just to hear your point on that. Thank you.
Well, I think entrepreneurs do sell their companies sometimes and
sometimes
leave it in that way. But the original point, first of all, and then do by all means comment on the second observation.
Yeah, let me address the innovation and entrepreneurship piece. There are different levels of innovation. One innovation, certainly most of R&D supports the business, renews the business, find new things which are still along the basic line. And then what we call corporate research, which is in the responsibility, by the way, of the board. So the board takes care of that, is very, very long-term oriented, which really means totally new businesses. So in our case, we spend every year 1.4 billion euros in R&D, out of which more than 300 million is corporate R&D. And this is business where you have maybe sales turnover starting in 10 years from now. One example is, for example, green biotech. So, and this is a totally different business model because we are not going to sell seed, we are just selling our own technology. It's an entire change. Now, how does this come about? How this is interrelated with entrepreneurship? And maybe just to answer this question in all respect, because we need to answer this also. Entrepreneurship is everywhere, everywhere, on the basis that you facilitate innovation and entrepreneurship in your company, that there is a culture of entrepreneurship. And you have to have the right structures in place in order to help make this happen. And this is especially, now coming back to your question, it's innovation. This has to have a very specific culture, no limitation. So entrepreneurship, the sky is the limit in innovation, very clearly. No limitation. And this is done, in our case, from a corporate research point of view, taken care by the board. And I would say this is not everywhere, I know, but looking into chemistry, and all of you sitting here, you live with chemistry. And chemistry makes your life easier. It's not when things are stinking and exploding, it's if the world and your life is getting easier. We help you to survive every day. And we have all kinds of ideas, if it comes to electromobility, for example. This is chemistry at the end. Chemistry is the enabler of the future. And this is why I think innovation is essential for the survival and the performance of companies.
Good. Well, I'm glad we don't have any physicists on the panel. Andreas.
Yeah, let me make one observation on your second remark, which has to do with my own family. I mean, you said, do entrepreneurs, family entrepreneurs sell their business? And of course they do. We read that in the paper every day. For some who are really passionate with their business, it's like, you know, taking the heart of their body. And I remember when my father sold Jacob's Coffee, he was in a very, very terrible situation. It was emotionally horrible. And for the whole family, but for him, probably 10 times more difficult. And that's why it is very difficult. And where does it come from? It comes basically from the fact that you really live and die for this business. You're born into it. The first thing you hear when you hear something from your dad is, you know, this is our company, we live for it. So my father worked for it. And there's those entrepreneurs who are very deep into the business, who have a we and us feeling with the company. They're not just shareholders. They are the part of it. They are part of the employees of the whole team. They love the customers. And this is actually how we feel as entrepreneurs. And for them, it's a nightmare to sell the business. On the other hand, the good news is it helps the companies to drive very fast, I think, to be successful, potentially more successful. Mm-hmm. That's a different entrepreneurship Mr. Hamrich is talking about. This is the entrepreneurship of the family with a very deep blood emotion in the business. It is, of course, dangerous because it can create mistakes, it can create non-corporate governance issues, it can create family preferences and so on. But I think you're absolutely right. They don't like to sell, it happens, and if it happens, the deeper the person is in the company, the more it hurts.
Can I make a comment?
Of course,
I heard a lot of comments this morning about if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to pay the price. You have to really want it, and you have to go through. And it was very much described this morning for the case of the private entrepreneur starting his business. But I think if you choose to work in a large organization, you will find the same. If you have ideas, if you want to push these ideas through, it's not going to be easy. I mean, the whole structure will try to cool you down and to make you wait, etc. In fact, I spent in my car life, I spent 20 years in the hierarchy, trying to push ideas and finding that it was very difficult to push them through. And then I spent 10 years being at the top, saying, hey, guys, I want innovation. And I found the reaction was not so strong. So it's entrepreneurship in big companies. It's also a difficult spirit. And I would like to make sure that, of course, we all need chemistry, but we also need chocolate and cars.
Yes.
I think what I'll do is take a couple more questions to finish up. So I'll take two questions at once. The lady here, who I'm afraid my eyesight is on its way out, but also the lights. Yes, exactly.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maitha. Actually, I'm from Abu Dhabi City, which is United Arab Emirates. I'm in College of Business, Marketing especially, and I work as a tour guide in Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque. Well, actually, my question is, and I'm not sure if I'm saying your name in the right way. Is it Boju? Mr. Boju?
Sure.
Yeah, is it right? Yeah. I'm just asking because I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry.
Brand recognition, that's so difficult.
Okay. Actually, since the morning, I've been hearing a lot of things about entrepreneurship. And what I understood is that when you have an idea, you start your own business, right? Okay, but what you said is that if in your firm, you would welcome people who have new ideas, even if they would work as a help desk, which I think, and you said it yourself, it is a boring job, but you would welcome it because they have new ideas. So what I'm asking here, why I would sell my new ideas for a company that I'm working for if I am entrepreneur and I can start my own job?
Please do.
I'm
Okay.
sorry?
My
Yes.
point was just to say that there are plenty of opportunities to create companies, and companies are created all the time. But there are also many jobs in big companies, and so this is just what I said. That probably, from a statistical point of view, the majority of you will get into large companies. Maybe I'm wrong because I have no statistics, but the majority of jobs are there. It's not an obligation.
I think it's also, isn't it, your choice? You can be entrepreneurial within a company and have the security of working within that company, or you can take a bigger risk yourself outside if you feel so inclined. It's partly a personality thing, I think. Let's have one more question from the floor. I see almost right at the back, but not quite right at the back. There, yes, your hand, I can see your cuff on your shirt. That is your defining characteristic.
Sorry.
Wait for the microphone, otherwise it will be a redundant question.
Thank you. Standing? Okay.
You don't have to stand if you don't
You
want
just
to.
told me I had to. So I'll sit. Okay, I'm Pascal Boris from France. George W. Bush was quoted as saying that the trouble with the French is that they don't have no word for entrepreneur. More seriously, Europe is aging, people are risk averse, and states account for a growing share of GDP. Is entrepreneurship doomed in Europe? And what role can family-owned companies play in ensuring that European entrepreneurs don't get extinct and that there continues to be growth in Europe?
I have to say, I think this is a very, very good question. In the sort of milieu that I inhabit in the world of politics, social policy, crime, Eastern Europe, and so on, there's a distinct sense of the sort of Untergang of the Abendland at the moment, of the West in decline. When you look at both Europe and even the United States as well, we do seem to have lost the spirit a little. Is it still there, or should we just gracefully hand over to India, China, Brazil, et al.? Jürgen.
It's there, in a great way.
Great.
Now I'm sitting here now also, let me say, in a university. I'm visiting almost every month a university. And I'm talking with a lot of young people. There is a lot of entrepreneurship. There is a lot of independent thinking, maybe more than in other places of this world. However, yes, there is a sense, especially, let me say, here's Central Europe, of risk aversion. The so-called precautionary principle has somehow moved in the direction of risk exclusion. With this, we would not have even invented the car. Today, car invented today
Very costly.
would be very difficult to bring into the market.
Very costly.
Because you can kill people. You know? And if you want to avoid risk by any means, then we are really getting into deep troubles. And this is an issue in Europe. We are handling risk every day in our company. Chemistry here is dangerous in parts. We do it very responsibly every day and demonstrate it day by day. Now, what we need to have here in Europe is a different spirit. Let me say, yes, the inventor spirit, pathfinder spirit, have Yeah, fun with new technologies. Be more curious. And here comes my point, and it's a real issue what was addressed here, because we will not get rid of this for many years from now. We need to educate people early on in kindergarten times, school, high school, university. We are doing this in a big scale, by the way. Preschool education and children, if you teach them about chemistry, it's like Harry Potter if they come out of these meetings. And then they go home and they talk with their parents, and the parents do not trust enough in the capabilities of children. This is a very fundamental thing we need to address here. And I think this is more in Europe than anywhere in the world. And I would like to ask all of you to help in really addressing this wherever you are.
After that stirring appeal, I would like our other three panelists just to have a brief word to end with, if they feel so inclined. If not, don't worry. But I'm now being pressed for time, and so as brief as possible. Sanjiv, would you like to go first?
Have faith in entrepreneurship, and more importantly, have faith in entrepreneurs.
Andreas.
I have a slight disagreement with which was said. I think the number of entrepreneurs is actually growing. I remember when I went to business school in 1990, we were 15 people out of 180 taking this new venture class. Today, in that same university, I think everyone takes that class. There is seed money in the world, less now, but 3 years ago, a lot of seed money in the world, supporting everyone who has a good idea. I think there are plenty of good entrepreneurs in the pipeline in the Western world. And I know, yes, the sexy ideas today is not, something smart in the Western world. Maybe it's more a solar system in Cambodia to clean water or whatever. But I'm sure there will be plenty of entrepreneurs in the world of tomorrow, and we need them. And I'm very positive on those entrepreneurs to help the world to be a better place. Thank you.
Well, I also think there is in Europe plenty of will, plenty of people ready to push new ideas, plenty of innovation. So we are not finished. That's very important to tell. But there is, at the moment, short term, I feel a real risk that if the Southern Europe, the Greek crisis goes badly, we might enter into a deflation. And the problem with deflation is that it's twofold. Once, it depresses everybody, so there is less entrepreneurship, less innovation, less drive to create new things. And second, give me the recipe to come out of a deflation situation. Japan has been there for quite a few years. It's not so easy to come out of it. So the choice we have at the moment, or is it a choice? I don't know who decides. Between revolution or deflation is a very worrying choice and a very big danger for entrepreneurship in Europe and for the future of European economy. Sorry to finish on a stern note, but that's it.
No, I think it's an important, sobering note that we finish on. Yet, although the premise of our session was comprehensively destroyed within about 5 minutes of starting it, I nonetheless feel as though we have learnt a lot of important lessons here about how to go forward. And I would like to say I agree with Monsieur Peugeot that the Greek crisis is a very, very serious crisis, and we need all of us from all walks of life, but above all the entrepreneurs in our societies, to really engage and not let us collapse into a sort of deflationary despair. Yes. Thank you all very much indeed, and may I call on Lord Griffiths for the summing up.